question was about good doers and how to manage weight loss effectively and healthily as well. Like, I mean, I know that a lot of clients have come to me in the past and been like, okay, so should I put them in a yard and reduce their grazing and then turn them out at night? But I thought this is a really good opportunity to speak to those. So we had Zoya, who has a mare that I know very well. She's a Clardy Cross thoroughbred, so she eats off her oily rag, so to speak.
Yep.
And then also Kate and her horse has EMS and ringworm as well, which we won't go too much into, but just managing that in a diet.
Yeah, so it's a massive topic, keeping weight off the good doers. Something that I really struggle with personally with my horses. So it's, you know, no one's alone in this argument. And about every 5 years, we start getting new sort of perspectives on the metabolic issues, which is why I'm not going to really address that side of things. But I'll just talk about what we can do to make sure that while your good doer is on a diet, can't permanently, how we manage that while still making sure that they get their other nutrients that they still need. While they don't need any more energy in their diet, they definitely need everything else just as much as every other horse, and in some cases more so if they have had laminitis and that sort of stuff. You know, you need that good nutrition to make sure the hoof can repair and grow again. So assuming your horse, this good doer, doesn't have a history of any laminitis and is not acutely laminitic, I'm just going to put that out there, we're assuming that hasn't happened, then I don't see a problem with allowing them to have at least some access to pasture. But there's some things you can do to manage your pasture to make it safer and healthier and less fattening for your good doer. And basically you want to aim to get your pastures really long and mature. So the longer it gets, the more mature it gets, the more it's just made of kind of structural stuff and water. And so your horses can munch on that and they should not put on excess amounts of weight. Obviously there's a bit of pasture management, rotation, resting, everything that goes in that, which again is a whole nother webinar. But that's the aim. You want your pastures to be at least, you know, the size of a pen tall, really, before horses go anywhere near it. And ideally to another 50% on top of that for the good doers to make sure that the pasture is mature. A lot of people will freak out letting a fat horse into a paddock that's full of grass that long. But in fact, it's better for them than putting them out on the Jenny Craig paddock, which is full of short, stressed grass. Because when your grass is never given the opportunity to grow, it puts itself in kind of a panic mode and it just holds on to all its little sugars and it doesn't build anything. It just holds on to its reserves so it can survive. So by having them on those bowling lawn kind of paddocks, you can actually be a bit counterproductive when you're trying to deal with an overweight horse. But yeah, again,
really counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. So
whilst this season we're down here just seeing these lush pastures that we have for years, and we're like, oh no.
Yeah. And I mean, there are issues when you go from a change from having no grass to longer grass, and you guys have got it a little more tricky than we do, sort of from Sydney and further north, because you've got different sorts of grasses. So your C3 grasses, which are your temperate grasses that you guys have, do have a tendency to accumulate more sugars than our sort of subtropical grasses. They really can't get to those really detrimental levels up here. But the same principles apply. The longer, the more mature the grass, let it go to seed, seeds fall off, then you basically got, you know, standing hay. Like it's really not going to have a lot of nutrition in it, which is what you want, just to be able to keep your horses grazing without getting too fat. Other things about pasture management is that morning grazing is the safest time in terms of sugar content in the grass. And by morning, I mean sort of 2 a.m., 3 a.m. The reason it's low then is that the grasses create sugars via photosynthesis, which involves the sun. So as the sun comes up in the morning, the grass photosynthesize, they produce more and more sugars. until the afternoon, and then when the sun goes away, they can't produce any more sugars, but they're still using them up, doing their little plant things. And so towards the end of the night, that's where you're going to have your lowest sugar concentrations. And they've used them all up. So, and then until about mid-morning again, that's when they start accumulating again. So if you had a really sensitive horse, or you were trying to reintroduce a previously laminated horse to grass, the safest times is to do it very early in the morning. And certainly not, I see a lot of people saying they put their horses out at night because the sun's not out at night. So you've kind of got half the message there, but in the first part of the night, that's actually when your sugars are highest.
Yeah.
Because it's had all day to accumulate and it hasn't been used up yet. So by the same principle, cloudy days are better than sunny days, and rainy days even better. So right now in Sydney, these grasses are not full of sugar, that's for sure. And my horses are coming in for teff hay voluntarily. So that can tell you something. And we have, the grass we've got it's almost knee high, bright green, it looks lush, but they're not interested in it. So that tells you something. Another good thing when you're managing weight, good doers, if your horse doesn't want to eat something, you're probably onto something.
Don't change it.
Yeah, unless it's moldy hay or something. But in terms of pasture, if they're not that interested, it's probably a good pasture to have. If they're not on pasture, or they're not only on pasture part-time, which is definitely something to consider, because they can eat up an awful lot of grass when they're left to their own devices. If you want to bring them in the afternoons or in the evenings, you do need to offer enough hay to make sure that they're eating enough, just like your older horses. 2% of the body weight is where I sit at. Some nutritionists and vets will suggest you go to 1.5% body weight, but I think that that's too low, and I think you risk creating other problems with gastric ulcers and digestive issues, which unless the horse is acutely anemic or there's something really bad going on, if it's just a fat horse, I just don't think it's worth the potential and very real possibility of ulcers and that sort of stuff when you start to bring them below 2% body weight. And even at 2%, they can eat that much hay quite quickly. If you gave them 10 kilos of hay all at once, the horse could eat that in a few hours and then have the rest of the day with nothing. So it's very important to use hay nets and slow feeders to try and slow them down, and then spread out the feed as though they were grazing as much as possible. So yeah, that one,
Sophie. I've read a few different things. So with the feed test for the low sugar hay, that with your ESC plus starch should be 10%, and I've also heard in other places they recommend under 12%.
Yep. So the difference there's a bit of a rift in the nutrition community. Look at ESC plus. Yes, it's an unresolved issue, and there's people who are strongly for and strongly against each side. So
it's probably a safe bet for clients if they look at WSC and the starch and that's under 12, and the ESC and the 10, kind of winning.
You should be fine. Reducing weight in the good doer, we need to make sure obviously they have enough forage, but that it's appropriately low energy forage. But once we've done that, when you're talking about these sort of lower quality, lower energy forages, they often come along with being quite low in protein. But our good doers still need as much protein as the bad doers and everybody else. So a good way to get a bit of protein into your good doer's diet is, again, some loosened hay, because you can actually take out some of their low sugar hay, their teff or their Rhodes or whatever they're on, and replace that with an equal amount of loosened hay. So you haven't changed the amount sort of total feed they're eating, but you have improved the protein content of the diet. So you don't risk putting on too much extra weight, but yeah, you just get that extra good quality protein, as opposed to if you go, oh well, I'm going to add lupins, which are contain more protein than lucin per kilo, but that's not a hay anymore. It's a hard feed, so you have to add that to the diet. So you're also adding extra calories that the horse really doesn't need. Same with copra, same with soy, all those other sort of extra concentrated forms of protein are great, but they add extra weight as well.
And with that one, you spoke about low energy. With looking at a feed test for that sort of, would you be looking at the digestible energy content?
Yes. Yeah. And so when I say low, if I was looking for something that was low energy, I'd be looking ideally at something that's under 8 megajoules per kilogram. Yeah. So your lucerne is usually going to be around 8.5 or 9 or even more. And anything you can get under that is great. Yeah, and then beyond that, no hard feed. These horses do not really need any hard feed. Sometimes people feel really bad for not giving their horses all the yummy things in the bucket, and they think that they really need that, but they don't. All you need is something to put their mineral supplements into. So that can be a bit of chaff, and when I say a bit of chaff, I mean 2 handfuls of chaff, the smallest amount that you can get them to eat their minerals out of. You can also use beet pulp and stuff like that, low sugar fiber feeds, but we're talking about really small amounts. It's just to get them to eat their supplements, and so they do definitely need a mineral supplementation, and this depends a bit on the situation where you are, what sort of grasses they're on, what sort of work they do, but we're talking about occasionally calcium, magnesium, but not always, but definitely all of the trace minerals, because trace minerals are always very low in our forages. So copper, zinc, selenium, iodine, particularly if they're not getting any grass, and the vitamin E and omega-3 fatty acids, especially if they are restricted on good lush pasture, are very important to supplement. If they're getting 6 to 8 hours of good quality pasture, the vitamin E and the omega-3 fatty acids are perhaps not as crucial. But if they're in a dry lot sort of full time, pretty much, you definitely need to be thinking about those as well.
Flax seeds or something similar.
Yeah. So I find flax seeds just the easiest, most cost-effective way to get omega-3s into them, and they like them, and they're just easy. Because you can start using the fancy oils, some of which are marine based, which have sort of it's a bit complicated to get into, but they have a different type of omega-3 fatty acid, which is believed to be more directly absorbed in the horse. But in my opinion, the horse is designed to eat plants and not marine life. So I'm sure that they have a way to use the omega-3 fatty acids in the end that we just haven't worked out which way is better yet. So I wouldn't waste my money on those sort of oils, the manufactured oils, basically. And then the last thing is nothing to do with nutrition. With good doers, it's exercise. The more exercise you can get into them, the better. And any exercise is better than no exercise. So if you think, oh God, no, I really don't have the time, or my horse is lame, or I'm lame, or it's raining, or whatever the problem is. I know we all have reasons that we can't work our horses enough, and I don't want to make everybody feel guilty. But if you can take them for a 10-minute walk 3 times a week, that is better than doing nothing. So don't feel like because you can't ride 6 days a week for an hour that you may as well give up. Any exercise you can do is better than nothing. A 10-minute lunge, whatever you can do. Obviously, you do need to build up slowly according to the fitness levels of your horse. But the more you can start to add a bit of duration, a bit of intensity to the work, the more you will find that your horse's metabolism improves, which allows them to lose weight and kind of keep it off a little bit more easily. And in some horses, this is a massive thing. Like, no amount of diet management really does it for them, but exercise is really the key. Other horses, it's a bit like people, some people will respond better to diet than exercise, but it is absolutely crucial with horses. There are other things you can do to get them to passively exercise without you needing to be there, where you set up your paddocks so you don't just provide all their needs in one spot. So make them go and walk for their water, make them go and walk to their shelter. Don't put the hay in the one place. Even if they're in a small yard, you can use multiple hay nets or slow feeders so that they have to walk from one to the other. They actually found a while back they did a study on some ponies where they had a setup where they had feeders on each side of a fence, and they had some mechanical way of closing the gate or opening the gate so that every 10 minutes they had to walk around to the other side, and it was not a big distance, but over 3 months the horses that had to walk compared to the horses that just had the one side access and then the same amount of weight, they lost weight. They lost a significant amount of weight.
Yeah, wow.
Just from having to walk 10 meters every 10 minutes with grazing muzzles. They can be very useful if you want to let your horse out grazing with other horses so they get social interaction and the movement, but you really need to watch how much they're eating. Muzzles can be great for that, but some horses just don't tolerate them very well, and either will sulk and refuse to eat, in which case you can wait them out a little bit, but some of them are really very determined, and then you've got to think about whether they're kind of suffering. And then some horses just get really stressed and start trying to take them off, and in which case that's not an option for your horse, but they are definitely something worth trying in some cases, particularly if you don't have an area to lock your horse up when necessary. So that's a quick rundown on the very complicated topic of
you made it
weight management.
Very understandable and very consumable, so thank you for that.